All right, so let's count through this again. So we're going to stay here. We're going from this C up top. So we're going to say this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going from 5 to the 6. That's our point of focus. So we got 1 whole step to 2, 2 whole step to 3, 3 half step to 4, 4 whole step to 5, 5 whole step to 6. And that's our point of focus, the 5 to the 6. So now let's keep on. So as I look at that A, let's try to analyze that step right there in a little bit more detail. When I look at the step from the standpoint of the G, which is kind of what we're doing in the formula when I go from the G to the A, I'm kind of thinking of it as though this is the focal point, right? Because I'm basically changing the focal point on each step in the formula, and that means it's going to be 2 notes away from that G. So if I was to build a chord from the G, the 2, the second of the G, which would be in a Mixolydian mode, because that G is in essence Mixolydian when I'm looking at it from the perspective of the relative major, then the second of that chord, which would be a Mixolydian chord, would be a 2 notes away in this case, which would be the A. So that means what if I tried to look at it from the perspective of the Mixolydian? If I was to say that this fifth, from the 5th of the major scale, if I was going to try to make it the 1 of the Mixolydian, if I'm going to call it the 5th position, I would have to take whatever mode it's in, absolute mode number 5, and what I call this, minus 4 to get it to 1, right? So it would be the 1st of the Mixolydian, and then the 6th, which what I would call absolute mode number 6, minus 4, would give us a relative position of 2. So in other words, if I was to look at it from the perspective of the Mixolydian, the G would be relative position 1 of absolute mode number 6, the Mixolydian mode, going to absolute mode number, or going to the second, which is absolute mode number 6, or Aeolian, otherwise known as the minor scale. And that's going to be going from G to A, right? So now I'm looking at it from this perspective, going from the 5 to the 6. From the perspective of the G Mixolydian, it would be going from the 1st to the 2nd. What about from the perspective of the C to get to that A? From the perspective of the C, of course, the A is going to be the 6th. It's the Aeolian. So I'm going from the Ionian to the Aeolian, which we would expect to be an interval of a 9 note away major 6. How can I prove that? Because I can say there's 5 notes between each string, 5, 10, and then back to 9. So if I was to play this then from the standpoint of the C, that would be a 9 note away major 6. All right, let's go through the rest of the notes in here. So I'm going to go up to the B now. So now I'm going to go from, I'm going from the 6 to the 7 on the same string. So I'm going outside of our shape here, because I'm going to go around the horn on one string now. So now I'm going from the 6 to the 7, which is going to be a whole step. So we're going from the whole step, from the 6 of the major scale to the 7 of the major scale is a whole step. I'm going from relative position 6 to relative position 7, which is absolute mode number 6 Aeolian to absolute mode number 7, the Locrian. And then on the Locrian, what is the Locrian's relative position to the major scale? It's going to be an 11 note away major 7. How can I check that out? Because it would be 5, 10, distance of 5, 10, and then 11 notes away, which is what we call a major 7. So if I was to say from the C to the B, 11 note away major 7. So now let's go from the 7 to the 8 or 1 is going to be a half step. So we're going to go from this 7 to 8 or 1. It's going to be a half step going from B to C, and that's going from relative position 7 Locrian to relative position 1, which is the Ionian or the major scale, going from here to here. All right. And now that, of course, is the octave. So that should be a 12 note away octave from the position of the C. And that would make sense. How can I prove that? Because I can count it up. It would be 5, 10, 11, 12. 12 notes away. All right, so now I'm going to keep on going from the 1 to the 2, and we'll go around the horn now. So we're going from the first to the second is a whole step. First of the major scale to the second of the major scale is a whole step. It's going to be going from the absolute mode number 1, Ionian, to absolute mode number 2, the Dorian. So I'm going from here to here, whole step, from C to D. And where would that D be with regards to the C or the major scale that I'm in? It would be a 2-note away major second. A 2-note away major second. How can I prove that? Because I can say this is going to be 5, 10, 11, 12, or octave, and then around the horn again, 1, 2. So going from this C to the D, 2-note away major second. Let's also compare it, since I'm focusing in on this G, let's also compare it to the G. What would it be to the G? Well, the G is the 5th of this major scale. It's going to be absolute mode number 5, the Mixolydian mode, and now we're going to the D. So if I was going to make absolute mode number 5 Mixolydian the first, it would be 5 minus 4 would make it the 1, or Mixolydian. And if I made the D the first, it would be also 2 minus 4, which would be negative 2. There's only 7 notes in the alphabet. Therefore, it's going to be 7 minus 2 is 5. So I think we would be going from the first of the Mixolydian to the 5th of the Mixolydian. Let's double check that, going down to the Mixolydian. So now Mixolydian is relative position 1, absolute mode number 5, Mixolydian is the G. To go to the D would be relative position 5 for absolute mode number 2, the Dorian, which would be the D. So whenever I go from Mixolydian to Dorian, then that's going to be what we would, the interval would be a 7-note away perfect 5th. 7-note away perfect 5th. Now, how could I count that? Well, this D is also right here, so it's going to be a 7-note away perfect 5th. It would be, well, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-note away perfect 5th. Okay, that was a lot more explanation. Let's bring this back on over here, because we're going to bring it back on one string within the 12 positions. So now we're going to say, now we're going from the second to the third. Second to the third is going to be a whole step. So we're going from the open D to the E is going to be a whole step. So second to the third is a whole step. We're going from absolute mode number 2 to absolute mode number 3, which is going from the Dorian to the Phrygian. So going from the Dorian to the Phrygian is always going to be then a whole step. And we could see the Phrygian lives at the bottom of this, of what I call the house shape, the box shape. If I compare the Phrygian to the C major, which is way to the C, which is way over here now, then what is that? Well, that should be, we can see here, a 4-note away major third. A 4-note away major third, which I can count out and say, let's count it. It's going to be 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So 4-note away major third from the perspective of the C. What about the perspective of the G? So the G would be at relative position 5, absolute mode Mixolydian. To make it the 1, I would take the 5 minus 4 would make it the first. And then I'm comparing that to the Phrygian, which is absolute mode number 3. So I'd also minus 4 would be negative 1. Negative 1 plus 7 would be negative 6. So I would think it would be going from negative the first of the Mixolydian to the 6th of the Mixolydian. Or I can count the distance, which if I'm going in reverse now, I'm going to the inverse distance behind it, would be 1, 2, 3 notes in between. Because I'm going behind it, I have to take the inverse, so it would be 12 minus 3, which would be 9. So I would expect it to be a 9-note away major, a 9-note away is, a major 6. So you would think that would be a major 6. Let's look at the Mixolydian and check it out. If I go to the Mixolydian, relative position 1 of absolute mode number 5, Mixolydian on the G, going to, what was I going to? The 6 which is the relative position 6 of the Mixolydian, and this is going from the Mixolydian to the Phrygian. So anytime I go from the Mixolydian to the Phrygian, it's a 9-note away major 6. That's the distance, 9-note away major 6. Okay. Muy interesante. Let's go to from the 3 to the 4. So if I go from the 3, let's do it over here. The 3 to the 4 is a half step, going boom, boom, going from this E to the F, half step. We're going from a modal standpoint, from relative position, absolute mode number 3 to absolute mode number 4, Phrygian to Lydian. Whenever I go from Phrygian to the Lydian, I'm going to be at the bottom house of the box, going from the basement to the front, going from the Phrygian minor scale to the major to a major scale, Lydian, a major mode. And if I look at the 6, that was going from the 3 to the 4, 3 to the 4. Now, if I look at the 4 compared to the C, that's going to be what we would expect, a 5-note away perfect fourth. 5-note away perfect fourth. It's going to be distance of 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Wait, what am I on here? I went from the 3, I'm on the F. So it's going to be 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. It's a 5-note away perfect fourth. That's right, 5-note away perfect fourth. What about from the perspective of the G? From the perspective of the G, it's going to be, if I take absolute mode number 5 minus 4, would make it the 1. If I take absolute mode number 4 minus 4, that would be 0. 7 minus 0 is 7. So I would think it would be going from relative position 1 of the Mixolydian to relative position 7 of the Mixolydian. We can also think of it as saying, okay, what's the distance? There's 2 notes between it because I'm going behind the G. That would be the inverse distance, 12 minus 2, which would be 10. So what I would expect from the distance of the G, it would be a 10-note away, which would be a minor 7. Let's check it out. Go down to the Mixolydian, relative position 1, absolute mode number 5, Mixolydian, going to absolute or relative position 7, absolute mode number 4, Lydian, which is the F, which is a 10-note away, minor 7 away. So anytime I'm going from the Mixolydian to the Lydian, the interval is going to be a 10-note away, minor 7. All right, so then I'm going from the relative position 4 to relative position 5, and it's going to be a whole step, relative position 4 to relative position 5. It gets us back to where we were before, and so that's going to be a whole step going from the F to the G, boom, back to where we started. Okay,